Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting, good communication, and child development all over the world. And in this video, we are going to be talking about how to teach a child to sew by hand. So in this video, we're going to talk about why it's important to teach your child to sew by hand, and then some simple things that you can do to get them hand sewing. So I'm known all over the world for teaching parents how to teach their children skills and principles of self-government. Like these books right here teach children the 4 basic skills of self-government, which are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. And I really think that it's important to teach children all adult skills. So those 4 basic skills are adult skills that everybody needs to know to learn how to communicate well and not take things personally and be calm and get their point across in a good way. There are a lot of other adult skills too that our children need to know, and sewing is one of those. I remember my mother sitting me and my brothers down separately and sometimes together and teaching us how to sew on buttons, how to make a seam. I definitely did a lot more sewing on the machine, but even my brothers learned how to machine sew as well as hand sew. They also learned how to cook. I learned how to fix things, how to mow lawns, how to do all the other things that, the boys were probably more interested in. Mom and Dad and our family made sure that we all had a breadth of knowledge so that we were ready for adult life. So then I remember when I went off to school and my brothers went out of the house, I remember that we would always take a little sewing kit with us so that we could sew something up. And I was so glad that I did, because when I was at college, I remember pulling out my sewing kit and fixing a little hem on my outfit because I didn't have my sewing machine or anything like that with me. But because I had a basic knowledge, then I could do something with it. Just like a basic knowledge of music is going to be useful, this type of thing is going to be useful too, just for regular self-care. So let me show you what I've got here. It doesn't take a ton of supplies, but I've got a needle, of course, because we've got to do the sewing, and some thread. I've got 2 pieces of fabric, some scissors, some pins, and a button. And really, that's all you need to teach a person to sew. So not a big expense. I mean, especially, as you're just beginning. So let's look now at what we're going to do. So the very first thing you have to do is teach your child how to thread the needle. Super important. Got to get that little thread through the hole of the needle. All right, I'm going to have to put my glasses on to make sure that I can see it because I'm older now. I actually used to do so much sewing. I have sewn formal dresses. I've sewn, I've done a lot of quilting and everything. I've done so many things with sewing. Okay, so when you sew, you don't want to leave, when you do hand sewing and you're really going to make like a seam or something, you don't want to leave a little bit trailing off. When you do embroidery or something like that, then you're going to run it through the needle and then you'll leave a little bit hanging. But when you're going to do regular hand sewing, you've got to have the ends matching up to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the ends so that they are equal. And then we are going to tie the knot. Now that's probably the hardest part, believe it or not, is just tying the knot in the thread. My husband had this great idea with this group of boys. He leads this group of youth at our church. And he said, honey, we got to teach them the basics of sewing. And I said, okay, we'll teach them the basics of sewing. And we spent half the time just trying to get everyone to get the knot tied. Okay, so that tells you. And then after that, we did a little bit better, but tying the first knot is tricky and they might have to practice at it quite a bit. So what I did, and now this is, I don't even know what kind of a knot this is, but this is what my great-grandmother taught me to do when she taught me to hand sew. So it may seem a little gross, but you lick your finger and then you put the threads on your finger, you hold them there with your thumb, then you take the other thread and you make a cross on your finger. So you cross them over each other. Oh, let's do that again. Put them together as one, cross them over each other. So now they're crossed on your finger. So now what you do is you take your thumb and you just roll them together So now I've rolled and made this very twisty type of a string here, and I take my other finger and I'm with my thumb here and I'm going to pull it down, and then that makes the little knot, okay, at the end of the string. You might have to work on that a little bit, but that is the best way to make a good sewing knot. I know that for many of you who normally are subscribed to this channel, you know that there is a system for just about everything, because I love my systems. Well, there's definitely a system for sewing. So you want to teach your children about the fabric, that there's the right side of the fabric and there's the wrong side of the fabric. And normally when we're sewing something together, it looks prettiest if we put our two wrong sides together, doesn't it? But you have to explain to the children, but if we put our two wrong sides together and then we do our seam, then we're going to have a problem, because when we open it up, it's going to look like this. We don't want it to look like this and have all of the other stuff on the outside over here. We want it to look like this when we put our seam together. We want the two right sides to be together. So what that means is you have to put your right sides together, even though it seems funny to do that. All right, now there's two different types of seams that you could teach your children. So there's just your basic in and out stitch where you run it through normally, and then you push it right back up the other way. Oop, there we go. Right back up the other way. And of course, there's an easier way to do this where you can just go, up, down, and you can bend the fabric, but you probably wouldn't teach them that just yet. You just have them go in and out and in and out, okay? So that's just a simple little up and down stitch, just your regular stitching there, okay? So then another type of a stitch that you could use is a stitch where you wrap around the edge. It's a little bit more decorative. It's a little bit more of a secure stitch, especially if you have some fabric where there's fraying on the outside like this. So I have a machine that's called a serger, and that machine will stitch the straight stitch and another straight stitch, and then it will actually tip all around. We'll make just a few more little straight stitches here, in and then out. And if you don't want it to pull like that, like it's pulling, then what you have to do is once you make your original stitch, you have to do a little back stitch and then come back that way, and then it won't pull like that. So let's now talk about this other stitch that is going to go around the top. So what you do is you're starting on your fabric here, and then instead of going through this way, you are going to lock it with the edge by going around, oops, find a good spot there, by going around the edge of it this way. Now you can just pull it so it just goes right over the edge of that. You could pull it nice and tight if you wanted to make it really tight on the edge there, but you can just see where that stitch is. Now, one thing that I like to do when I teach this stitch to children is I'll have them go do this roundabout stitch, and what I have them do is actually put this loop that you've made over the top of the needle, because when you do that, then your stitches go a little bit forward, and then they're a little bit better as far as staying in alignment goes. So anyway, that's what I do to teach just a straight stitch, but there are more things that a child needs to know than just how to do a straight stitch or to do a binding type stitch here around the edge like this. So what they need to know is also how to fix things when they break. So if we're gonna do a hem, then what I would teach my child is how to fold it up and then how to fold it back so that then I could do a little hem stitch. That might be a little advanced for at first, but one thing that almost everyone needs to fix is a button that comes off. That happens all the time. You know, I just realized I had my pins lying here. Now normally I would teach a child to use the pins. I didn't, because I think I've done a lot of sewing in my day, and so I forgot. But I would teach them to pin their fabric together so that it doesn't come apart when they're doing their sewing. And you could pin it down this way or this way. all the way around, but just getting those pins in place actually helps the child so that they can work with the fabric and not have it moving around. I'm able to maintain it without, and so I forgot to do that, but definitely having pins is helpful. Okay, so let's go ahead and sew the button on. First, let's take a quick look at our mini seam. Okay, so the seam is only to here, so we're not gonna see tons of stuff, but you can see our little seam here is coming together quite nicely, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna tie off the seam, and I want to just show you how to tie off, how to make a knot once you're sewing in something, okay? So usually what I'll do is I'll go back a little bit and find some extra fabric, like just a teeny bit. My end stitch is here, I might go back to here and go through the fabric one more time. And now I'm gonna have this loop here, okay? In the loop, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap my needle around the loop 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm gonna pull it up, and it pulls a knot right there into the fabric, okay? You also could make one other little stitch, you know, just a regular little straight stitch. You could do either kind of stitch before you pull that into a knot. So now I have to make another knot at the end if I'm gonna do my button, right? So now I roll it and pull it, and I've got another knot there. And we're gonna start the button. So I'm just gonna pick any random spot here. We'll put the button up here at the top. So normally you're gonna have a special place where the button is supposed to go so that it fits into the buttonhole, but we don't have that kind of a situation here. So you're gonna teach the child, and at first it's not gonna be pretty, okay? But you're gonna teach them how to come up in the holes and then go down in the holes. And you could teach them to do a crisscross pattern, like an X pattern on the top of the button, or you could teach them to make it so that the buttonholes, the hole, there we go. Or you can teach it, you can have them go, you know, just 2 little cross with the holes. So right now, that's what we've done. And then on the back side, it'll look more like an X. So it's either gonna look like an X on the front or an X on the back. And that just depends on what type of a pattern you want on the top of your button. So I have chosen on the top of my button to have it be just straight lines across those buttonholes, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie it off on the back just like I did before on my little seam, and I'm just gonna sew a little teeny stitch right behind the button, and I'm gonna pull it, and there's a loop there, okay? So then I circle in the loop 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So now I'm gonna pull it up and pull it down, and it's gonna knot right there. It knotted. And so now I can cut it. Now obviously I would sew way more times on my button than that, but just to save time on the video, we've just done only 2 or 3 stitches across each side of that button, but you'd probably want to do probably like 5 or 6, I would say at least, just to keep it really secure. But that is the basics of hand sewing that you would want to start with. And then after that, you can move from there. What I did when I was little is I started sewing little things for my dolls, my little Barbie dolls and stuffed animals and baby dolls, and it's not going to be perfect at first. In fact, it's going to look a little rough, but let your children experiment with scraps of fabric. Let them learn these basics and then just really work on seeing what types of creations they can make. And just so you know, little tiny pillows for little teeny dollies sometimes bring the greatest joy, because you just have to sew in a square and then you stuff them and sew the end shut, and then your dolly can use it and it seems useful, makes you feel like you really did something. And so those were the types of things that my mom taught me to do when I was little. Now this is a lot of learning just for one simple thing. And this isn't the normal type of thing that I teach here on this channel. I usually teach about parenting. Like I said, about different adult skills. And if you want to know more about the types of things that I teach related to parenting, calm parenting, that teaches the children self-government, then I highly recommend that you watch the class on this channel called The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. Click on the link to that video now. I'll see you there.